Hello and welcome to our QPR Preview Show ahead of the home match against Preston North End in QPR's last match before Christmas. We come into it 6 games unbeaten for the first time since Mark Warburton was in charge, thanks to a draw last week against Bristol City, making it 12 points out of 18 after we'd only picked up 10 points out of the 45 prior to that. But were we lucky to get a point last week, Dave?
Oh yeah, very lucky to get a point. I mean, performance-wise, it was pretty poor, wasn't it? I mean, it was similar to a few of the defeats we had early in the season at Derby and games like that, where I think if we concede in the first half, we probably lose that 2-3 nil, probably more. Bristol City missed a hell of a lot of chances, but luck seems to be with us a little bit at the minute. They hung on in the game, and I mean, the goal come out. Even the goal was a bit of a fluke when Smith took it really well, but what were they doing setting up for that corner 1-0 up with no defenders back? It was ridiculous, really, wasn't it? But we've done well to get a point, and we could have nicked it in the end. To be honest, we had a few chances at the end. So performance-wise, not great, but a good point on the road.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a third game in a 3-game week. We tend to struggle, especially away from home. Early kickoff as well, which we discussed after a Wednesday match. And I thought we looked very leggy and tired, almost a large lethargic, especially when we had the ball. And we spoke last week about how bad the first half was against Oxford. Bristol City was arguably a worse first half, especially from QPR. You just touched on the performance levels there. Is there a concern about how we are performing?
Yeah, I don't think we're playing brilliantly. The results have been a lot better, but I say the Oxford game, I didn't think we were that good either. But it just shows you the fine lines in this division. We probably played better early in the season and didn't win games, didn't get points. So it's kind of turned a bit. But I think long term, I always think if your performances are at a good level, the results will continue. If we keep playing like this, the results will probably drop off eventually. We're not going to win games, consistently playing like this. But it's needs must at the minute. They were in an awful position 3 weeks ago. And this 6-game run we've gone on, it's not been pretty, but it's really dragged us out of trouble. And I would imagine that's going to continue this sort of way of playing for the foreseeable, just to keep us safe, really.
Yeah, definitely. Smarty Cifuentes is just clearly being pragmatic, given the position we were in, like you say, just a month ago. Like Bristol City, there was no energy, which hopefully shouldn't be a problem against Preston because they've had a week off. It was a bad performance, though. We had passes going straight out of play. There was no movement for most of the match. But I think any changes that the manager tried to implement at the start of the season have largely gone out of the window. And obviously, we were bottom 5 points from safety. He's just doing what we need to do to get points. Maybe we'll see some changes again once we're in a better position, hopefully. Bristol City as a team actually reminded me a lot of Burnley. They're just lovely passing it around, but often going nowhere, no penetration. And let's face it, I don't think QPR actually concede in the game if we don't concede from a free kick. So it was a good defensive performance, despite some criticisms of our all-round display. And we have to mention the goal scorer, Paul Smith, because we talk kind of relentlessly on these shows about a lack of end product all the time. Yet he's got that finish in his locker. Quite frustrating, really.
It is. He's one of them. When he doesn't think about it, he can produce something like that. I think if he took another touch, he'd have probably skied it because he's hit it so early. It's gone in, and maybe he should think about that with his crossing a lot more. He does when he takes his time. Tends to be all over the place, very erratic. But he's got it in him. He's always had it in him, Smith. Even when he was with us in his first spell, he's got that ability, and I think we probably said a lot last season. We see him more as an impact player off the bench, but again this year he's had to be first choice because of injuries, and he's doing a decent job for the team.
Yeah, it was just for me a bit of a bizarre level of confidence for a player that usually struggles to hit the target for much easier positions. I was shouting for him to take a touch, turn, and then shoot. But you're probably right in saying that it's good that he didn't do that because when he thinks about it, he then wouldn't have hit the target. But it was a moment to remember from a game that we didn't really perform in. Overall, I think you've got to think about the match, and we had a low XG. I don't think I've ever seen it too far apart as two teams. I think QPR was like 0.16 or something like that. We only had 8 touches in their box compared to 35. I think we have to realise we have to be happy with a point. But an excellent week overall for the team. Dave, our best week of the season, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. It was, the Oxford game was massive. That was one we had to win because it's a team around us. You don't want to be falling a further 3 points behind them. So to beat them was really big for us, and that to get a point at the end of the week, it just rounded it off really, to be honest, Um, I don't think we've had many better weeks than that. And as you said before, it is hard, these 3 game weeks, and we do tend to lose that third game. So it is a massive positive we didn't lose that third game, even though the performance wasn't great. And being able to ease a few of the injured players back in as well. It's certainly a lot of positives going into the Christmas period.
Yeah, and it's why it's so important for us to have started winning home games again, because then it makes a point
Mm.
on the road a good point when it doesn't really matter how you perform away, as long as you pick up something. And we only have to look at the table from 4 weeks ago. We keep alluding to it, but we were 5 points from safety, and now we're 5 points above the dotted line. So genuinely remarkable, really. And beggars can't be choosers. We would have all taken this position heading into Christmas. Before we move on to Preston, we have to recognise Mark Prince getting his Sports Personality Award for outstanding achievement in the face of adversity. Richly deserved, Dave.
Yeah, it was brilliant to see him get like national recognition for it. He's well known to QPR fans, and we've done lots in recent years with the stadium name and stuff on the shirts and all sorts of different things. But to see him get that recognition at a big show like that, and to tell his story to the whole country, what he went through. I think as any parent would be, I don't know how anyone would cope with something like that happening to him. Whether it was whether Kyan was a footballer or not, it's just a terrible thing to happen to someone. And what he's done and how he's recovered and turned into something positive, just so much respect for him. And I was at Leeds recently, and he was at the game at half time and gave an impassioned speech, probably the highlight of the game, to be honest. Whenever he speaks, he just speaks so well. And yeah, delighted for him, really pleased that he got that.
Yeah, I actually found it quite emotional watching it, because I don't know, because I've got 2 young boys myself, so you can't even imagine the pain he went through. So, for, like you say, for him to channel it the way he has and to be getting the recognition that now, and the Kind Prince Foundation deserve it, don't they? So, I'm also really proud of how the club has supported him and helped him raise awareness over the years. I truly believe we are the best community club out there, and long may it continue. On to Preston. It's up on Saturday, and it's the 3rd season in a row that we're playing Preston in December. So somebody somewhere obviously thinks this is a very festive fixture for some reason. I don't think QPR or Preston fans would agree. There was a period in the past where I always felt we never beat Preston, and we didn't for about a decade. But we won home and away last season. We've won 3 of the last 4, 6 of the last 10. So we have improved in recent times. And if we were playing Preston about a week or so ago, the pitch looked a little bit different for them. They were 10 games without a win. But in the last 2 games, they got the first win in 11 matches against Cardiff last Wednesday. They backed that up with a very decent point against Leeds, where they only conceded in stoppage time. So how would you sum up Preston, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, they had a really poor start to the season, didn't they? They had to change a manager and that early on in the season, but they seem to have settled down to what they normally are at this level. They're hard to beat normally. They draw a hell of a lot of games. I think I saw they've drawn 11 games this season. That's kind of why they are where they are. They're not going to be much higher if they draw that many games, but it also shows they're not going to be easy to beat. So probably like us, often pretty lack a few goals to turn these draws into wins. We're quite similar in that sort of regard, but I think it's going to be one of them games where we look at it, Preston at home, you'd look at it on paper, right? That's the game we have to win. This is far from easy to win this sort of game. That they're always well organised. They've got a good manager, and yeah, it's going to be a tricky game for us.
Definitely, and they are a strange team to judge. If you look at it one way, they're unbeaten in 6 games. If you look at it another way, they've only got 1 win in the last 2 months. So, for me, they're far too solid to actually go down this season. Like you said, very much like a standard championship side. They'll win some, lose some, draw a hell of a lot. Usually always competitive in games. Don't think they are very often get battered at all. But like you said, they don't really score enough to win enough to then push up the table. 4 of the last 6 matches have been 1-1, and one of the other 2 was 0-0. And I think that sums up Preston pretty well. And both teams generally have less possession. Both QPR and Preston at the moment now rank in the bottom 6 for pass accuracy. Is there a concern we could end up with a first half like Oxford?
I think there's a very good chance we will, because we haven't been very good on the ball, and Preston haven't either. We're both going to want the other team to have it and to break on them. And I think that's probably how we'll try and play again. I know Cifuentes from the start of the season wanted us to dominate possession, but we just don't have the players in midfield to do it, to be honest. I know we've got a few coming back, so maybe that'll change. But yeah, I don't expect this to be a pretty one, to be honest. And they're offering loads of ticket prices for young kids and that at the weekend. I don't think they're going to be overly thrilled with what they see.
No, maybe get some fans in. It's the first home match, I think, without a storm coming, isn't it, for that
Yeah,
2 months? But yeah, it could just be both teams giving it away because we neither side want the ball. Could be a bit of an insipid watch. I just hope we start on the front foot more, like we did the second half against Oxford. Surely that has to be the blueprint. I don't mind the possession stats dropping if we're getting results. And I think it would be a bit of a risk in some ways for us to suddenly change how we want to play for one game. Final point on Preston is that I noticed Josh Bowler is there on loan. I hadn't even picked up on that until I started looking at them. He always seems to do well against us, so definitely one to watch out for as a former QPR player to score against us this week. The first question when it comes to QPR this week is something I've noticed on all the forums this week after his performance against Bristol City, and that is what has happened to Lucas Andersen.
yes, it's been bizarre. He was such a key player for us last year, and just completely fallen off a cliff this year. And probably the Bristol City game was a good comparison to the Bristol City away last year. He was absolutely fantastic. He set up the winning goal. He created loads of chances in that second half. He looked really good, and he always had. I know he didn't score many, but he always seemed to have a goal threat about him, and his corners were good. This year, it's the complete opposite. He just can't complete a pass, and he's just a bit of a passenger when he plays. He's just sitting there waiting for when is he going to come off. He's been a little bit better off the bench recently. I say it only a little bit, not a huge amount. I just don't really get what's happened to him and how the drop off has been that much. And you know, I think if we'd have signed him in the summer without last season, I think he'd be getting a hell of a lot of stick. But he's still got that credit in the bank, hasn't he? But yeah, it's this really disappointing from him so far this year.
Yeah, if the Bristol City match was his debut, people would genuinely saying, "Who the hell is this guy that we've signed?"
Mm.
And it is odd how I don't know, maybe his confidence has just disappeared, but he was bright and dynamic for me last season. There was matches where he was all over the pitch, getting it off the defenders, then up near the strikers. Now he can't get into a sprint. It often looks to me like he's like running through treacle. I don't know if he's lost confidence in his body a little bit because he's had an injury. He has looked, like you said, better off the bench. And with players coming back, I think that's going to be his role for the rest of the season to potentially just 20 minutes to help us control games towards the end. But yeah, very odd performance from him. Elsewhere, if we start up front, Michael Frey was back on the bench at Bristol City, but he wasn't risked at all. So it's unlikely that I think he suddenly starts here. So is it Coley or Lloyd that you would start this week?
Yeah, assuming he's fit, probably start Coley again. I did think Lloyd did very well when he come on second half. He stretched them a bit and tried to run in behind and caused them a few issues, especially late on. But probably start with Coley. He did so well in the Norwich game. I thought he played well against Oxford as well. And I'd probably stick with him here. Having Frey as an option off the bench last 20 minutes if the game's tight or if we need a goal. I think that's probably the best way that they'll do it. There's so many games over Christmas. They're not going to want to risk him pulling up again, and we've got so few forwards at the minute. They're not going to risk Frey yet.
Yeah, definitely. It's just great to have him back, like you say, even if it is for 15,
Mm.
20 minutes, because he offers something different to all the other players that we've got. For me, I'd start Collie as well. Goal involvement stats alone that he has make him my choice. And Lloyd, he seems to actually suit coming off the bench. He has so much energy, makes him a good choice against tiring defenses. So I imagine it'll be that way around again. At the back, Kenneth Powell returned for a cameo last week. Would you want him to start in place of Harrison Ashby?
It's a difficult one because I don't think either of them very good. I didn't think Ashby had a particularly good game last week. He almost gifted him a goal with the chest back that Necky Wells intercepted. And Powell, whenever he's played, doesn't just seems to be he's daydreaming a lot of the time. He's been quite poor. I don't think it helps as a left back in our team that they don't get a lot of protection from the wide players, even at right back as well. They've got similar issues. But God, flip a coin between those two. I don't think either of them are playing well at the minute. I'd maybe start with Ashby again because they did get something last week. But yeah, I wouldn't say either with much confidence.
Yeah, I think a coin toss is probably the right way to sum it up. I'd probably go with Kenneth Powell just because he's more natural in that position.
Yeah.
Ashby undoubtedly has a lot of confidence in his own ability, but for me, his confidence is greater than his ability because he runs off with the ball aimlessly. His passes are so slack at times. He was down at 57% accuracy last week. Could be to do with him being on loan, so he's just more casual about things. But I acknowledge he's been part of a defence that hasn't been conceding many. I just always get nervous around him, especially when he's defending. So I'd probably start Kenneth Powell, but I agree he's not been great this season either. Probably because his mind's elsewhere. He's not signed a new deal yet, has he? Barring unexpected injuries, I don't foresee any other changes. But the final question is a selection issue that's maybe raising its head with Ilias Chair back in the squad. Is can we realistically get Chair and Koki Saito in the same team?
If you play Chair through the middle, you probably can. I'm not sure Saito is going to be as good through the middle. I think he has to play out wide. Um, but it's a nice option to have if they're both fit, isn't it? You pick one or the other, and you could, with the games over Christmas, you can rotate the two of them a bit. Probably start Saito on Saturday because I think he's been quite good recently, and Chair's still coming back from injury. Again, good to have an impact off the bench. With it's so nice to have options off the bench now, isn't it? A couple of weeks ago, Cifuentes was looking to his bench and he was like, "Who do I bring on here?" But now he's got actual choices and he can make an impact in games. So, yeah, that's a nice choice to have.
Yeah, I agree. Saito should be starting. He's been probably our best player attacking wise for a few weeks now. Hope we've definitely got a permanent deal sorted for him. I struggle to see them working in the same team though a little bit because they both obviously want to operate in the same areas of the pitch. And we know Nicholas Madsen, if he's playing, he has to play in that number 10 role centrally. He doesn't work anywhere else. We've established in the first half of the season that only really leaves the wings for Chair and Saito. And Chair's never really played on the right. I think Saito hasn't looked as good when he's played on the right. He clearly likes to be on the left. So I don't envy Marty Cifuentes trying to work out how to play them all once they're all fully fit. It's good to have the options though, and it's certainly one for the comments on how you think Saito and Chair can start in the same team. But it just leaves us with our predictions to finish. So after no home win for over 7 months, can we make it 3 in a row?
We certainly can. I mean, it's a great opportunity to get a third win in a row, and I think it's important to get points on the board. But I do think it'll be a draw. I think Preston are, a very difficult side to beat. I don't think still we don't have enough goals in this to properly win games. So probably go 1-1 again.
Yeah, I think a draw is a very strong bet after everything we discussed. QPR and Preston both in the top three for draws this season. Factor in the fact that we're both on unbeaten runs, don't concede many, either don't really score many. Either. I think we've got identical scoring and conceding records. I can't look past a draw. I think it'll probably be 1-1, and I'd actually be surprised if it's not 1-1, to be honest. And that's it for the last match before Christmas, but it's not our last preview show before Santa comes to town, as we'll be back before then to preview the Boxing Day trip to Swansea. Do join us for that. Thank you for watching, and come on, you R's.